up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It's time for another edition of the Agents of Fandom podcast. It's been a while. I feel like it's been so long since we've all gotten together. We were watching Guardians of the Galaxy, then I got COVID, then I got pneumonia. It's been a wild ride, but feeling ready once again to get back, have the proper energy to give us a wonderful podcast here. And I'm down to break down some Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 because that was just such a wonderful movie. I'm joined as always by my co-host and best friend, Garrett Blaney. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good, and I'm glad that we kind of pushed this off a little bit to give you more time to recover, um, myself and Adam more times to view the movie, and just make sure that we can do this justice because I know it's important to me. I know it's important to Adam. It's important to a lot of people, and it's a great feat. And so I'm glad that we have full energy. TJ. He was not taken out of the cocoon early, and he's full power.
Ready to go at full power. It's crazy. I got lucky, if there's not, you never want to be sick, especially because there was a few days where I was real sick, but I went to the Calgary Expo, was fine for that. Obviously, that's where I probably caught COVID. And then I had a day of just being good. Tested negative, felt good, went to Guardians of the Galaxy, and then caught something else and was all kinds of different kind of sick. But I was just laying in bed playing Jedi Survivor for 3 straight days. And so if there was ever a good time to get sick, that it lined up pretty perfectly. And if you haven't played Jedi Survivor, but you're interested in the story, you can head over to the Agents of Fandom Twitch page where producer and co-host Adam Blevins was streaming the entire game, and may I say, it did a phenomenal job.
Thank you, man. Yeah, we had a really good time from start to finish. I'm having a good time. I'm kind of playing through it again right now, getting to experience a lot of the stuff that I didn't on stream. A lot of the exploration and all that stuff. And I got to say, my opinion of the game as a whole is like going up, just getting because there's so much that I didn't get to experience. I didn't want to take up the audience's time. I know people were a lot more interested in the main story than watching me run through caves, cutting up little spiders or stuff like that. So, but aside from that, with us moving into the Guardians coverage and stuff now, I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I just got out of my third showing earlier today, and I think even after 3, this is firmly in like my top 2 to 3 like MCU movies and projects as a whole. So I'm excited to be here with 2 or 3 of my favorite people to chat about it with you guys.
Very well said. I couldn't be more excited to dive into this with the two of you as well. If you're interested in more Guardians of the Galaxy coverage, make sure to follow all the Agents of Fandom podcasts wherever you get your pods. Rate 5 stars, leave us a nice review. But we got the Listen 3000 crew where Adam joined, as well as the Fandom Academy joined by Agent Jade Raffalo. I still never remember.
And well, also, in addition to that, I will be joining next week to chat about Jedi Survivor in more detail. So I wanted to get that in real quick. So catch that on the feed as well.
There it is.
Nice.
And happy birthday to Jade because it was just her birthday and she joined the Fandom Academy podcast to talk some Guardians of the Galaxy. So make sure you check that out. And we also have
Ash as well.
And Ash, yeah, birthday twins.
happy birthday to Ash as well. And make sure you check out the Agents Fandom YouTube page for more Guardians of the Galaxy content. If you're watching this right now, hit that like button and subscribe. But you can also find Ryan, our wonderful, amazing social media director, doing some phenomenal interviews with Chakudi Awuji and Sean Gunn, talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, talking about James Gunn's upcoming DCU. He just did such a good job, and this was pretty exciting that Chakudi Awuji was one of the people he got to interview because, Garrett, you were talking a little bit about this before we got on. This is coming full circle. That was that was the first roundtable interview I ever did was with Chakudi for Peacemaker. And now at the Canadian premiere, Ryan's there getting some in-person interviews.
Yeah, and not only that, but he did an incredible job. But before we go into how amazing he did, it's just kind of cool to look back and see, where we were a year ago and where we are now, and finally making it to a premiere, making it to some sit down in person interviews. And I initially had some anxiety about it because my original headcanon was, TJ, you were going to make your way out to Toronto some way, somehow, and be able to cover it for us, because you have always done so amazingly in our interviews. And that's not to say I didn't have any trust or faith in Ryan, because I absolutely did. But, my there was no world where TJ wasn't handling it for us. And then when it came down the pipe and it ended up that Ryan had to step in, he just prepared himself so professionally, so incredibly practiced. He prepared, and there was just no better person or way he could have represented the organization. And so it's just it's kind of like a proud papa moment for us to see, how far we as a team have grown, but also like individually how far some people have grown professionally. So shout out to Ryan. Shout out to the entire team for the work and the growth that they put in to get us there and to get him there for us. So proud of you all, and I love you all.
It's truly incredible what our team has been doing. Like, even it feels a lot like we're birds, and the baby birds are finally they're learning to fly, and they're damn good at flying and they're gonna crush it, but still it's like, oh god, what if something bad happens? These are our babies. Exactly. But like, even when we were doing the interviews for Daisy Jones and the Six, and M interviewed Timothy Oliphant and absolutely crushed it. Ryan stepping in to do these ones. Aisha just had her first press conference for The Little Mermaid, where she intended an in-person screening to, and now it sounds like we got our fingers crossed, but her and Ryan might be able to be heading to the Canadian red carpet premiere where all the actors are going to be coming in. So we got our fingers crossed for that as well. But just shout out to the whole team, because everybody has been so incredible, and these opportunities are only going to be continuing to come. But make sure you check out Ryan's interviews up on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page, as well as agentsoffandom.com. You can find them there as well. As we had, of course, wrote up some pieces as Sean Gunn and Shakuti Iwuji were talking about the future DCU. Speaking of that, before we even dive into our thoughts of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I mean, this will bleed into it a little bit, but I want to tell me what you guys think about the future of the DCU now that you've seen this movie. James Gunn, who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, as well as the Suicide Squad in the DCU and Peacemaker in the DCU, is now in charge. He is the head man. He's the Kevin Feige of the DCU. He's also directing Superman Legacy, which was announced today that it's going to start filming in 2024. It's set to release in 2025. We're kind of hoping San Diego Comic-Con might be when we get our announcement of who that Superman could be. Garrett, how do you feel going into the future of the DCU, knowing that James Gunn's at the helm after seeing this movie?
After seeing this movie, fantastically. I mean, I think he did an incredible job with this movie, and that can't be understated. But I don't ever think I was. I think I was always had some faith in him to pull it off. This just cements that further. If you think about it, it's not a 1-for-1 comparison, but it's a similar kind of path to how Feige came up and came to be where he's at now, president of Marvel Studios. And it's a love and a passion for these characters that ultimately is what guided us to where we are today. And I think that same love and passion, if it wasn't evident before, I think it's completely evident in Guardians 3 how much James can care about these characters and pour that into his writing and his work and his planning. And yeah, I think that's just going to translate pretty effortlessly into the DCU, and I'm so excited to see what that looks like.
I'm with you as well, because like for me specifically, I kind of looked at it. We've talked about this a lot before, and I remember saying, like, back in the day, going, You know, like, I don't think James Gunn is going to be directing something like Superman, but I feel like he's such a big comics fan that he'll find the right person for the job. But after hearing what Superman specifically means to him, and then seeing Guardians of the Galaxy and all of these characters' stories being perfectly tied up, I'm so excited to see what he can do with this movie. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. And then the big thing for me is just like, I've been a Marvel fan for a long time. I've been following the MCU since the beginning, and I remember when the Guardians movies, were announced, or when the very first Guardians of the Galaxy promos and trailers and stuff started coming on. Because like back then, I wasn't following it any kind. Like I didn't hear any breaking news. Like they're doing a Guardians movie. This like I just started seeing the trailers on TV, and I was a big Marvel fan. Like I loved Iron Man, Captain America, and the Avengers and all them. I was like, Guardians of the Galaxy, like way back then, I was like, that looks like kind of lame. Like I don't know if I like really going to be into that. And then you fast forward to now, and I've bawled my eyes out through this movie 3 times because I love these characters so much, and I think that's just like a true testament to how good James Gunn is at like telling stories and getting people to care about characters that like you may not have like even wanted to give a chance, in the beginning. And so I'm kind of like with Garrett, and really like how both of you guys said, I was never down on him. Like I never doubted his ability to do it, but then like seeing how he wrapped this whole thing up and capped off the Guardians trilogy just gives me that much more confidence that he's going to handle things over there really well.
And I think that's kind of, I want to lead into the rankings of where this kind of lands as a trilogy in the MCU for us, and also as an individual movie in the MCU for us. But one of the things I think for me, where is why I have it a little bit lower than I think you, Adam, is I think this was honestly a near perfect movie. I think it was absolutely incredible. But in terms of my personal enjoyment, I just don't think the characters individually and as a squad mean quite as much to me personally as they do a few other people. And I think one of the reasons for that is I'm so, like it or not, nostalgia driven. And so, like, the first Captain America movie, the first Iron Man movie, and especially things like Spider-Man, I've been so excited to see that since I was 3 years old. That fun when it's finally there, it's like, oh my god, these are my guys. And even with things like certain new characters that have been introduced to me, like She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel, where I don't have as much background knowledge, but I still have a bit of that nostalgia factor, and if not that, enjoyment from playing games with those characters and stuff like that.
TJ said, "I've never been a misfit, so I can't relate to this team of
Hey,
a-holes." I'm just kidding.
yeah, I've been a misfit grinding with those guys before they were popular. You know what I mean? Back when no one knew who the hell Iron Man and Captain America were. But having said that, I still did adore this movie. Garrett, for you, where does it kind of land on? You saw it for the second time today as we record. Where does this kind of land on the entirety of the MCU ranking, and where does it land as a trilogy?
I can tell you with certainty that as a trilogy, it lands firmly in my number one spot for me. And the reason for that is in every other trilogy, I can pick out a movie to you that I am not as up on. And this one I can't. I had this thought in the theater today that I think that I could watch all of these movies. Like if I were to watch all 3 of these movies 100 times, I could possibly come out with 100 different favorite movies out of the trilogy. Like depends on what part of the movie I'm in, really. The emotional roller coasters are so up and down, and I really can't choose a 1, 2, or 3. And as I get older, I realize that I necessarily am not the best at ranking things anyways, because as a person, I'm a very in the moment person. I find it hard to live anywhere outside of in the moment that I am currently, which is not always the best thing. But
It
being
has
said,
its benefits, though. Could you imagine how much worse
sometimes
your anxiety would be if that wasn't the case?
well, it's still pretty bad, so I don't know about
Yeah, I
that.
know. It would just like amplify it. It would amplify it to a different level.
I can't even imagine how crippling it would be. But that being said, I have a general top 5, a general top 10, but it all changes pretty relative to to how I'm feeling when I'm watching the movie. And so I can't really lock down a place for anything, but I can say definitively that as a trilogy, this one is the top for me.
I feel pretty. It could change. I've only seen the movie once. I feel pretty confident it's going to be lodged in the spot that I have it, and that's number 7 in my MCU rankings. And I have it behind number 1, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home, Black Panther, and the Avengers. And then it's number 7 for me behind those movies. Now, having said that, I think this was the best trilogy of the MCU. It wasn't my favorite. It does have one movie for me that kind of falls below, and that's the second one. The humor in Guardians 2 just didn't quite hit at the same level for me. Guardians 3 for me is the best of the trilogy, followed closely by Guardians 1, which is also in my top 10 MCU movies. But for me, the Spider-Man trilogy, even though I think the Guardians objectively is a better trilogy, it was capped off with arcs that followed each movie, and it was intended to be 3 so perfectly. But with my love for Spider-Man, and then the joy that was Spider-Man No Way Home, and I did love the first 2 movies, that one, just in terms of personal enjoyment, I think pops ahead of it for me. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I kind of align with you a little bit on this, TJ. For me, like trilogy, or really for both of you guys, trilogy wise, I think this is my favorite trilogy, and I think it's the best trilogy because, like you said, Garrett, if I look back at all of these other trilogies, and I really enjoy the Captain America trilogy and the Spider-Man trilogy. That's how that comes in at 2 to 3 for me. But when I think about it, like there's one that I can pick out that I'm just not crazy about, and I feel like on any Saturday, like I could just sit down and watch all 3 of the Guardians movies and have an absolute blast. So trilogy wise, this is pretty easily at the number 1 spot for me. Now MCU ranking, I actually had a little bit of a tough time with this because I have and keep 2 pretty much completely separate rankings, and that's like one of them for me is like my personal favorite because it's so hard with the MCU for me to separate the things that I enjoy the most and my personal favorites with like what I objectively think is the better movie or TV show. Like those are oftentimes don't align very much at all. So and I haven't really had a chance to rank Guardians and like where I think it is technically as a good movie, but I can tell you that it would be really high. But like in my personal enjoyment rankings, it comes in at number 3 for me behind only Infinity War and Endgame. And I know, Infinity War is not really a surprise. A lot of people have Infinity War at number 1, but Endgame, I know a lot of people that's 2 is pretty high, for Endgame in general, like for a lot of people, I feel like. But the way that I rank these movies in a sense like this is I judge them based off of how they make me feel, especially like the first time that I watch it, but also like on continual watches. And this movie, even today in my 3rd viewing, just made me feel things like I just felt like I was living in a pool of emotion throughout the entire movie. And that's how you get me to love something, is to play at my emotions. And then like the only 2 other ones that I think have done that better for me are Infinity War and Endgame. So I've got it right there at number 3. Right behind it is Civil War because I just absolutely love Civil War and that stuff at the end. Tony and Cap going back and forth at each other, and then that separation as somebody like many of us that watched them, closely grow together for so many years and then split apart. Like that was good. I didn't think that I would ever come across like something like that besides like an Avengers movie, but Guardians 3 did it for me. So for me, it's easily the best trilogy. It lands at number 1 there, and then it's probably my 3rd favorite MCU movie.
And if people are more interested in us ranking trilogies and picking our best, next week we got a pretty exciting draft for you. We got some friends of the show joining us. Bit of a surprise. We'll announce it later next week. And we'll talk about our favorite 3rd movies. And we're going to be drafting them. And this isn't just going to be limited to Marvel, but I'm sure Guardians 3, No Way Home, Infinity War, all of these are definitely going to be getting drafted, I would assume. But we're going to be picking our Ragnarok, and maybe even Civil War. But we're going to have to compare this to some great 3rd movies that have recently come out, like a John Wick 3. Some classic superhero movies like a Dark Knight Rises, or a heist movie that I love in a trilogy, and that's Ocean's 13. then you throw in Star Wars and things like that. There's a lot of different great third movies that could potentially come into play with this draft. So make sure you tune in. This is going to be a live show. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one. But popping back to Guardians of the Galaxy, I want to talk about the villain, Chakotay Iwuji, the High Evolutionary, because many are calling this the best villain since Thanos, one of the top tier MCU villains we have ever had. What do you guys think of that? And again, for more on this, check out Ryan's interview on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page with Chakotay Iwuji, where he dives in. I want to throw this to you first, Adam, because you helped him out, as well as Carlos, one of the Agents of Fandom as well, with one of his most crucial questions in that interview.
Yeah. You guys said everything that there was to say about, Ryan and how incredible he is and how incredible he did with the interview earlier. But, now that I have the chance, I also want to just say I could not have been more proud of everything that he did. It was funny. I know I'm distracting a little bit, but I don't know if you guys remember, he had told us when he came out, he was like, man, I came out, my hands were shaking. I feel like my voice was shaking. And when he told us that, I'll be honest, I was like, oh man, I wonder if I'm going to be able to see that. And then you see it on the video and you're like, this dude is a bona fide professional. He went in there and just absolutely
calm, cool, collected.
Crushed it. Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't even tell that he was nervous at all. So I just, amazing shout out to him right there. But, the question for those of you that aren't familiar with it, that haven't seen the video, I helped him formulate, Carlos and I both, one question about, which is something that I was really interested in going forward. Like, animal cruelty is obviously a very, very sensitive topic. And it's immediately going to get everyone in the audience to turn on you when somebody sees you, or when the audience sees you, doing horrible, horrible things to animals, torturing them and stuff. So, Ryan Aslan, he had a really, really great answer that you can find on the Agents of Fandom YouTube about how he handled that sensitively and stuff. But getting to to the rankings and stuff, I'll say for me, I've got him at the 3 to 4 rank. I don't think anybody will ever pass Thanos in the overall villain ranking. But it's going to be hard for anybody to beat out Hela and probably the Green Goblin as well. For me, I know we got a pretty small performance from Willem Dafoe in No Way Home. He wasn't really the feature villain for the entire. He was, but then it's we didn't really get to see him go into full Goblin mode until the last 30 or so minutes of the movie. But it's just that last 30 minutes, he goes so crazy that I think I've still got him at 3. But Chakotay was in the High Evolutionary is just right there behind him because he did such a great job of just being absolutely despicable. We never had a reason to root for him from the beginning all the way to the very end. He didn't give us any reason to be sympathetic or be like, well, he's got a point. And that's you can do villains the other way and have it be great, but you can also do them really, really good this way. And that's what they did. They made him just completely menacing, absolutely hateful from start to finish. They did a great job, and his performance was absolutely incredible.
Green Goblin is kind of like this, but I can't wait for the MCU to give us a bit of a villain similar to Heath Ledger's Joker, where it's just, and this is one of the reasons why I was so disappointed with Venom Let There Be Carnage, is Carnage is one of my favorite Marvel villains because that's what he is. He's Carnage. He's chaos. He's just there to fuck shit up. And it'd be really cool to see somebody like a Captain America or Spider-Man, somebody who's really moral, have to deal with somebody who's literally just there to fuck with them. No other reason than just to fuck with them. I think that would be something that's very interesting. But I'm with you. I think this type of villain, where it's just sinister and scary, it was awesome. Killmonger is one of my favorites in the MCU. I think my all-time favorite is Loki. That's my favorite Marvel villain because I love a villain where I don't know when he's going to be a villain and when he's not. I love being on my toes. You guys know me. I always like to theorize and guess. And so I never have an idea what Loki's going to do next. And that's just so intriguing from a storytelling standpoint for me. What do you think of Chakotay Iwuji's performance, Garrett?
Phenomenal. He did an incredible job. And I think we knew he was going to do a great job or he was going to at least be in his bag from him walking out in his suit and his costume at Comic-Con. Like, we knew that he was into this shit. But and I'm so happy that I get to bring this up, because this is something that I think about all the time when I'm watching shows, animated shows, movies, all the time. This happens where I'm like, these henchmen they get put through some crazy shit. They get asked to do some crazy shit, and they're always like, yep, yes sir, I'll do it right away. Yep, I'll do it. And they just like, I'm sorry, you cannot be paying me enough to do some of this stuff. You're just asking me to walk into my death all the time. And that happens all the time to henchmen. And finally in this movie, they were like, the villain is so bad that I'm turning on him. Like, no, you're not in control anymore. And I love that. And obviously they got obliterated immediately. But when your villain is so bad that even the henchmen turn on you, it says something.
Tried to start a revolution, but we didn't print enough pamphlets. I appreciated that too, because I viewed this entire movie from the High Evolutionaries' perspective as an allegory for capitalism, and specifically the extreme oligarchy type situation they got going on in the United States, where the only concern is progress and getting our bottom line higher. If we just are even this year, well, that's a failure. We can't be even. We need to be in the green. We need to have progress. And it doesn't matter how many people are suffering and how many people are getting kicked to the curb and killed and experimented on. As long as we have our progress and our bottom line increases, as long as we're in the green, that's all that matters. And that's kind of what I got from the High Evolutionary here. It's like, all I care about is my goal. I am your God. I am above you. And all that matters is my mission and the economy. I think is kind of like the comparison for that. And that's why I think it's so hilarious that there was those comments from like the trolling YouTubers of like, Guardians of the Galaxy is a success compared to Marvel's recent stuff because it wasn't woke. It's like, oh, it really, really was. It just went so far over your head. Like, you guys are just dumb. But I think
I think you're right. I think absolutely it did. They missed the point. But even if you missed that point, James put it in the movie pretty subtle, pretty easily by saying like he says a line in the movie to really jab it in your face, and I'm forgetting it right now as I'm talking about it, but it is that allegory that is the High Evolutionary, and they say it in a line just in case you're dumb enough to miss that point.
And I think the revolt at the end was the kind of icing on the cake. Was nice to see those people step up as well, which has been a bit of a theme with the Guardians, people that are at one time against them joining up with them. And we saw that with Adam Warlock as well here. Him obviously getting pulled out of his pod a little bit early, leaving him a bit of a baby and in the brain and a little bit goofy. I personally enjoyed the portrayal a lot. I think from a writing standpoint, it made a lot of sense. And I am excited to see some more of him in the future as well. Also, Aisha, his mother, my mother, all of our mothers, she was incredible in this movie. She stepped it up to a different level. I didn't like her that much in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but in this one, she was just maybe one of my favorite characters. Speaking of some of my favorite characters, Danielle Melchior from Ratcatcher 2 from Suicide Squad, she was one of the henchmen and part of that crew, and she immediately just stepped up and joined the squad. I thought she was awesome. I loved her in this performance as well. But Adam, what did you think of Adam?
I really enjoyed Adam Warlock. It's been so interesting and kind of confusing to me to see so many people complaining about, him being the big dumb baby. Because, there's been that whole discourse going on right now. Like, oh, it was so stupid for him to be acting the way he was acting. It's like, well, not only is it explained, like, word for word, you pulled Adam out of his cocoon early. Like, that's why he's acting. Then he says, like, there's something else that's wrong with him. But, like, everything makes perfect sense. And from where he's starting at now, there's so much room for him to grow. Like, you can just see there's so much room left for him to turn into just like an awesome character, whether it's a member of the team or whether he ends up in his own spinoff, solo project, however they decide to handle that. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I've been a little confused at so much of the criticism that he's gotten, because I thought Will Poulter did a really, really good job of playing that kind of big dumb baby, and like the humor, all of the stuff worked for me. Like when Kraglin hits him in the side of the face with the arrow, and he kind of turns over and smirks, and he's like, "Who threw that thing at me?" And then he's
Baby.
like, "Baby." Yeah, and he kept all the stuff, like all 3 viewings that I've had, all the Adam Warlock humor has all worked for me. I really, really loved him.
And I think it's kind of one of those things too, where I've been very critical of Drax's arc in the second movie. And I just kind of thought he was just a jokester and the Destroyer was gone. In this movie, I thought it was just absolutely perfect. Chef's kiss. But whether I liked Drax's thing or not, it wasn't bad. Dave Bautista was great. The writing made sense for what they were doing. I just wanted something different. And it always bothers me so much when people can't differentiate from that, when it's like, this sucks and it's poorly done, when in reality it's like, no, it's actually explained perfectly. You just wanted something different. And that's okay if you don't like it. If you don't like it and you wanted something different, that's all good. But that doesn't mean it was bad. And with this specifically, they laid it out for us and explained that's why he is this way. And so whether you want that Adam Warlock or not, it made a lot of sense for what they were doing. What did you think of it, Garrett?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I agree with Adam. All the humor kind of hit on me even the second time. I think it's a kind of a fun way to, well, first of all, it's a really cool way to tie everything together in making the High Evolutionary be the creator of the Sovereign, and I assume the Abelisks as well. But that's a really fun callback to the second movie, and then taking him out and making him a baby and pitting him against the Guardians, but then it's a fun way of kind of letting him have that alter ego that I'm bad, that I'm good, that I'm bad, that I'm good. He's really just fighting for, to not have his race be killed. He's fighting to save his race from genocide. So I guess he's never really bad, but he's opposing our Guardians, so he's an antagonistic force in the story. But it's a fun way of allowing him to be that antagonistic force, but also end up on the good side as well. So, and I think that there's absolutely a lot of room for him to grow. He's fucking strong as shit. Let's say that right out. He almost took down the entirety of the Guardians himself. Multiple times in the movie, he wreaked havoc on people. I just don't really know how he understood getting stabbed, how he survived getting stabbed in the heart at the very beginning, but I don't care.
Regardless of what happens in the future of the MCU, in terms of Secret Wars, Kang Dynasty, things like that, the one thing that I personally just really hope we get is a bunch of these super mega overpowered characters who, if we had them all together when Thanos was around, Thanos wouldn't have even been a threat. All together, just going toe-to-toe with each other. Like, doesn't have to be Civil War type scenario. Like, maybe it can just be for, like, a battle scene. Heck, it can even just be training. But I just want to see, like, whoever the hell Aubrey Plaza's character, Doctor Strange, Agatha, going up with Wanda, or Wanda leveling them up and having a big scene. I want to see Thor and Captain Marvel alongside Adam Warlock going toe-to-toe just like they were in that What If episode with Party Thor and Captain Marvel. Like, I want to see that in live action. I want to see these crazy powerful characters just going toe-to-toe with each other, because I think that would be incredible stuff. And the people wondering, like, why aren't we getting more Adam Warlock? Well, this is just his first movie. This is just his first appearance, a little introduction. This was still the Guardian swan song, and this was just something for him to say hello. And speaking of it being a swan song, we expected some deaths. We did a Deadpool, and there were none in terms of the main characters. And honestly, I think it was handled really well. The one little fake out that didn't really do it for me was at the end with Quill, because I was like, you don't need to die for a Zune. I understand the importance of it, but you don't need to just go back for that, and then your face is all messed up, and then it's fine, and you're alive, and I'm happy that you're alive, because I didn't want you to die that way. That was the only one that took me out of it a little. But for the most part, I was really happy with everything and how it was handled. And Rocket, just like James Gunn said, was the main character in this one. His story began and so much context is added to it from the first one and why he is the way that he is, and through the second one and why he's so angry at the beginning of it as well. We obviously see things like the Easter eggs from the first movie where Rocket is first introduced and he's getting his mugshot. Then it says known associates Groot and Lila. Well, we got a little bit of a retcon from that one, obviously, because James decided for this third story that Lila, R.I.P., great performance from Linda Cardellini, which weirdly enough, isn't Lila the same name that Hawkeye's daughter is? Well, anyways, that always throws me off with Linda Cardellini being involved with both of those.
And Judy Greer.
Anyways.
We got
and
the
Judy
wives, the ex-wives, or the wives.
Yeah, exactly. All coming back for that one, and then of course we had some great voice acting performances in this movie in general, like with Pete Davidson as that Blob, and of course, oh my
Tara
gosh,
Strong.
Tara Strong coming back, not only voicing Ms. Minutes in the MCU, but doing some voice acting in this one as well,
replacing Miley
Cyrus.
Yeah.
You can of course find our own agent CJ Jar's interview with Tara Strong from the Cleveland Expo up on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page and at agentsofandom.com as well. But what do we think about Rocket's arc in this movie? Because I found it interesting that like the Rocket we know and love was almost barely in this movie until the third act. But I still thought with the amount of different aged Rockets we got, and then saving his life being such a main crucial plot point of the story, I definitely wasn't missing Rocket in this one. I thought his arc was handled pretty beautifully. How about you, Garrett?
It's perfect. When at the very end Lila goes, it was always about you. It was about you're the main character all along. Like, oh man, it gives a lot of new context to going back and watching the entirety of the trilogy again. I think it's perfect. I was a little bit jarred at first, knowing that obviously he was going to be taken out of it for probably the entirety of it the first time I watched it, and then the second time I watched it, well, let me backtrack a little bit. I was jarred at first, but then I got used to it. I think they handled it very well. It never bothered me a bit, and then when I watched it this time, it still felt natural, and like you said, you still get enough of him in the flashbacks at different stages of his life, different growth, and oh my gosh, when the crew try to make their escape, that is one of the hardest scenes to watch in the MCU, maybe, I think. And if anything, the emotionality of this movie, how emotional it is to go through some aspects of this movie, might bring it down for me overall in terms of watchability, because it's a lot. It's like, I'm going to cry every time at the end of Endgame, you know, when we're talking about cheeseburgers, and I'm in a fucking pool of tears every time, and it doesn't matter. And that's like I can only take that so much, you know, like I might even have to just stop the movie before, or like at that part sometimes, and just not have to experience that. And that's not a detriment to it, because that obviously is fantastic art to make you feel that type of way. But for me personally, I am a very sensitive and emotional person. And so I just don't know how many times I can witness Lila Teefs and Floor bite the dust, to be honest. But it's handled incredibly well. Bradley Cooper does an amazing job. Sean Gunn does an amazing job. I think all of the team that handles that was in their bag. And let me just take a second as well to shout out the entire VFX team, because the entirety of the VFX in this movie is unfucking real.
The VFX, the soundtrack was just, I mean, we've come to expect that with Guardians movies, but so unreal. With this just coming directly after Quantumania, it's truly night and day. I'm never like a VFX complainer. Like, it wasn't that good in Quantumania, and I didn't care. That didn't take away from the movie for me. Yeah. But the amazing VFX in this one added to the movie for me. While poor VFX usually doesn't take me out of it, because I'm already in my make-believe land, so I don't really care. The amazing VFX really added to it for me, and it was just so incredible. The soundtrack, so amazing. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, in that fight scene at the end, which we'll talk a little bit more about, just so incredible. Um, I also thought it was really interesting how the key that Lil Baby Rocket was making before their escape looked so much like Awesome Mix Volume 1. Like, it just looked exactly like a cassette, and not only did it look like a cassette, but it was colored the exact same way as Awesome Mix Volume 1, so I thought that was a cool little Easter egg there. I loved Smart Little Baby Rocket. That was kind of my favorite Rocket of the movie. What did you think about his arc being all tied together, Adam?
This is like, I mean, you guys have eloquently hit on everything that I could have possibly said about it. But I mean, this is like Rocket's arc in these movies is like all time beautiful storytelling stuff, like what they were able to do with it. And there's like a couple of scenes, Garrett, what you said has been what I've been thinking about so much about these flashbacks being so hard to watch. Like, I feel like it's gonna really hinder me. Like, when this movie gets on Disney Plus, like, I'm gonna want to watch it, and then I'm gonna like be sitting in my living room watching that. Like, the very first scene that just tears me to shreds is when they're first messing with him. There's three scenes that really get me. The first one is really early on when he throws him into the cage and he's got that metal thing on his head, and he's I'm like getting emotional like thinking about it right now, because he's like shaking and he's crying, and he can only muster out like the one word, and he's just like hurts, and it's just like that. It makes me bawl every single time. And then uh, later in the movie, kind of in a different emotional wise, and Rocket's obviously he's come up and he's grown up through so much stuff, being there with that group, and then after he sees all of his friends killed in front of him, and he jumps on the high evolutionary and starts clawing his face. Like, to me, I don't know what it is, but all three times that I've seen it, I just start bawling, like thinking about, you've been in such a horrible place for so long, and there's been three like shining lights. Like, the only three things are keeping you going are those three people, Teefs, Floor, and Lila. I believe I got that right. Those are the only three things, like three creatures keeping each other going, like all of them were. And then to just see them all killed in front of you, I just cannot imagine. And like for them too, to have all been so excited about going to the new world and doing all that. That's like kind of to tack it onto this scene when he tells him, he's like, you could figure out all this science, but like you couldn't figure out that you're a machine cobbled together by children. Like, why would you think you were going to be in this new world like that? And then the last one,
I don't want to. I don't want to forget about this, Adam. So I'm just going to cut you off for one point with that, because that's something that I thought really hit, especially comparing this to the capitalism metaphor that we talked about earlier. Is it reminded me so much of when you look at the state of the United States right now and the super unreasonable attack on trans people. And why is it happening? It's just to distract people from the other shitty things that Republicans are doing right now. Gives something people to rage about. But that reminded me of somebody like a Caitlyn Jenner, who is trans and yet still is doing so much to side with these Republicans and basically go, I'm one of the good ones. You should like me because I'm one of the good ones. That's kind of what that reminded me of, because when you have a evil person in charge and you're trying to suck up to them and go, hey, look, I'm on your side, even though I'm one of the people that you're actively doing terrible things to. I'm on your side, so I'm gonna be going to the new world, right? Like, when the world blows up, you're gonna take me to the new planet with you, right? No, you were never coming. Have you not been listening to everything that we're saying? And that's kind of what that reminded me of, and I thought that part hit so hard.
Yeah, that's a really I didn't really think about it like that, but that's a great connection, and I agree that part, it hit me like a train. And then the last one for me is because throughout these first two movies, like the Guardian solo movies, and then their appearances in Infinity War and Endgame, it's just been so ambiguous about like what Rocket's past is, and it's always been like a big question, like why is Rocket? And they show him so like often throughout the movie, like taking it, like, and throughout all these movies, taking his shirt off, and you see all these cybernetic enhancements, and you're all like, we've been wondering for years, like what in the world could have like turned him into this? Like, how could this have happened? And like the fact that he won't even tell the Guardians about it, like throughout these movies, and then we finally get that scene where I think it's after they get the little ball from them, and
they all
they
watch
get
it.
to watch it. Yeah, and it's like that is just it's so hard to watch because they've been wondering about it for so long. Like obviously all of them have, but they were never going to push it like to get it right. But now it's one of those things like they needed, if they would have known this like in the past, like they might could have done something about it. And so it's like now them watching it, they're like, not only are they experiencing that pain, but then they're blaming themselves for all this stuff because it's like, although he didn't, like, it would have been tough for him to talk about, like maybe if we could have gotten like helped him out through this and opened up, like got him to open up a little bit more so it wasn't so closed off, like maybe we could have been in this, or it could have like avoided this situation. It's kind of like we see Quill when they're going through the shields. I want to give a quick VF. You guys were shouting the VFX, and I really noticed it for whatever reason in my showing today when they're going through those shields. Like that that whole thing just looked incredible. And I know that that's the kind of thing that I think in other movies they might would have just skimped out on, and like it would have just kind of broken like a piece of glass. Like, but they really put some thought, like even into just like they put so much detail and thought into this, like the VFX team did throughout. They did such a good job. But then like to ship out of what I was saying, in that scene, you can already see like Quill's starting to beat himself up because it's like back to the drinking. He's like, if I wouldn't have been, he's like, oh God. Like he's already, and like I feel like all of them are feeling that to a certain effect when they're watching him go through the stuff that he did because they feel so helpless, like in that situation, which just makes it hit all that much more to me. But his arc as a whole, like I said in the beginning, it's just like it's all time stuff. It's just so beautiful.
Real quick, I want to go back to the scene where Adam, when you mentioned that he jumps on the High Evolutionary and starts to like scratch his face and rip his face. And then it cuts to, he grabs the gun and he takes down the guys that come in, but then he turns around and obviously Teefs and Floor were killed. And then he goes, and I think there's a reason that we see this escape scene, right? Because we could just assume that Rocket, he went down the doorway, got on a ship and escaped. And then, we've seen the rest of it, so we know what happens. But we get seen, we're shown the scene. And he's getting shot at, he's running, he's hiding behind stuff, and he scampers into a ship and flies off. And I think that I noticed it today, I think that we get shown that because it doesn't matter. None of them would have made it except for him anyways, because he was the most agile. He was the most, I don't think any of the other friends, Teef certainly wouldn't have been able to wheel his way around bullets. And I think no matter what, his fate is to leave that place alone. And it's so, so well done. And yeah, I don't know how many times we're going to be able to watch it.
Not only is that so well done, but it leads, and this is one of the reasons why I think this is the best trilogy in the MCU from like objectively bar none, is because it wraps up everyone's arc so perfectly. Now we see that escape and we know none of those other people could have gone with him. But we also know that shapes him for the rest of his life. And it leads him right to the end where he goes, Quill, we're saving all of them. Not just the kids, the animals too. We're saving all of them. Because he got out on his own one time. And he knows how painful it was to carry that burden for the rest of his life. And so when he has the opportunity to save everyone at the end, he finally does. And especially when we compare that to the Rocket that we've seen throughout Guardians 1 and Guardians 2, where he's the one always going, let's just save our own asses. Where's the money at? What do you give a damn about the galaxy? I'm one of the idiots who lives in it, as Quill shouts it back out at him, because Rocket was all about himself before that. And so him finally putting others ahead of his own escape just shows so much growth for that character specifically. And we could spend a whole hour episode talking just about the different animals and the different creatures there. We could talk a whole hour episode talking about Counter-Earth, the Sovereign, and the different pockets of the galaxy that the High Evolutionary has created. But one of the funniest tweets I saw to sum all of it up was one of those, explain the plot of a movie poorly, and it was just like, guy gets unreasonably mad that a raccoon is smarter than him. And I thought that was such a good explanation, because that's kind of what it was. He had created all of these different all these different societies, but none of them had the intellect and the ability to adapt that Rocket had, and he still didn't even know why that happened. It was very similar to Avengers Age of Ultron, where everybody's getting mad at Tony for creating Ultron, and he's looking at Bruce and he's like, we didn't! We were nowhere close to anything. Like, we don't know what happened. And that's kind of how what this reminded me of, is like, yeah, you did it, but you don't know how you did it. It's like so many inventions and discoveries in the past where people come onto things when they're trying to figure out something totally different, and that's kind of what we got with Rocket here. But he wasn't the only one that had a perfectly enclosed arc. All of these characters just were handled so perfectly in this movie. If you have one or two that stood out, feel free to highlight on them. If you want to give a little bit of a summary, feel free to go that way as well. But for me personally, like, I thought this was by far Chris Pratt's best performance at Star-Lord. I know we like to make fun of him all the time, but like, he acted his ass off in this movie, and he did a really good job. We'll talk more about the post-credit scene and his kind of final arc at the end, but him throughout this movie I just thought was incredible. This new version of Gamora we got, I think that was my favorite Gamora of any Gamoras. I thought she was awesome. She was badass. She was emotional she wasn't emotional, but like the emotion she showed towards the end were so incredible. And the story being told of her own autonomy and being able to move on past relationships between that was told with her and Quill finding his own way, and her with the Ravagers having her own found family. It was just so incredible. Cosmo was an absolute highlight for me. Maria Bakalova was just so incredible. In the holiday special, I thought a little bit that like the voice sounded off to me. It just kind of sounded like, and I know it was supposed to, but it just kind of sounded like a radio call where somebody was calling in from their phone, and you can tell they're not using a microphone. They're like they're a caller, and they're on the highway home right now, and they're calling in angry about something. That's kind of what I thought Cosmo sounded like. But in this one, I just thought she sounded incredible. Her humor was amazing. Her and Kraglin going on about the good dog, bad dog stuff was just like, it got me every single time.
See, I felt about that joke the first time the same way that a lot of people feel about the ripe fruit in the second one. That people hate that joke, and
yeah, I actually like the ripe fruit one too.
I don't hate that joke. That joke has never won. Like, I like it kind of. And the bad dog was like, the first time I was like, okay, this is like a little bit much, dude. Like, it's a dog. Like, chill out. But the second time, it worked for me. It was like, all right, this is still funny. It works. And then the good dog at the end, it all tied together perfectly.
What I love too is just like, anyone who's a dog owner knows that just like we all have like an interior voice of what our dog might sound like, and especially just like when you're giving them shit and they're just looking at you like, no, I didn't do it, please just love me. It was so funny to actually hear that acted out from a immensely powerful being like Cosmo, who still has those traits of a dog. I thought it was hilarious. Drax, I complained about his arc, and I thought it was wonderful. He destroyed, he was funny, and he finally found his true purpose as a dad, which is what he's been longing for since the beginning of the first movie. It was
dancing dad, nonetheless.
A dancing dad, nonetheless. Exactly. It was just so incredible. Mantis, Palm Clementov, acted her ass off.
She was one of my favorites.
Her screaming at Nebula, saying like, yeah, Drax might be stupid, but he's the only one of us that doesn't hate themselves, was just such an emotionally incredible scene. But my favorite was Nebula. I didn't like, I clued into this halfway through the movie, and I kind of realized like, damn, I knew this when I was playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game. When I was playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game and I learned you could only play as Star-Lord, but then you still interact with all the other ones, it didn't really bother me because I didn't really ever have a favorite Guardian, you know? There was none of them that like stood out to me that was like, I want to be them. But Nebula's my favorite Guardian, and I don't think it's particularly close. And the way she just becomes a leader and has all this trauma that she's going through on a daily basis, and then has some hilarious lines. I loved her arc. I love the character. Karen Gillan does such an amazing job. Wow, I love that character. And it hasn't been really confirmed anywhere, but we saw Bucky them steal Bucky's arm for Rocket, and she talked about how Rocket gave her an upgrade. I have to assume that arm was made from the same vibranium that Bucky's arm was.
No, in his little Q&A on Twitter, James said that he said no, that arm was completely different. And I believe his words were, no, Nebula's arm is much cooler, I believe were his exact words on Twitter. So unfortunately, that is not the case, even though that would have been really cool.
I was looking at that one in the context of it, and I still think that it might have been the vibranium from it. Like, I don't think it's obviously not the same arm, but I think that's got to be vibranium to be shapeshifting like that. And oh my gosh, how much did it look like a Sentinel from Days of Future Past?
Oh,
yeah, it was sick. The arm was fucking sick, and I will say that I don't know if, this is going to be a weird statement because I don't know if I can say she's my favorite Guardian, because I do think after this movie, like, it does make sense that Rocket is the leader of the team, and like I feel like I have to say he's my favorite Guardian after this movie because he's great. But I will say that, like, Nebula's arc in the MCU is probably the best arc in the entirety of the MCU, because when she comes in the first Guardians movie, like, I hate her. She sucks. And it's a great performance, great writing and everything. But as a character, I'm just like, oh, this fucking character. Gosh, like, get her off the screen. And the transformation that she goes through between Guardians 1, 2, 3, Thor, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame is just phenomenal, because at the end, she's a leader who you would want to go to battle for. She's someone who you would want to live in the city that she's running. She is a respectable, person in the galaxy, and she's coming from, that's someone who was literally tortured for the entirety of her life. Her parts were changed out, as punishment, and the arc that we see on her is incredible. So I don't know if I would say she's my favorite Guardian, though it's close because she's fucking awesome. But her arc in the MCU is probably the best.
And shout out to Mantis as well, because something that all of these Guardians are missing individually before they meet her is empathy. None of them really give a damn about anybody except themselves until they meet the empath. And she teaches all of them how to care about other people and makes them all better for it. And I don't know if that's more evident in anyone other than Nebula.
It's a really great point.
I mean, like, and like, kind of like you guys were talking about, that scene of them on the ship is like one of the best scenes in recent memory for the MCU, where, like, she says to where Mantis and Nebula are going back and forth, like you said earlier, like the whole, he may be like an idiot, but he's the only person that doesn't hate himself. And what I think they did so well with Nebula in this movie is, like, you guys are absolutely right. Like, she's an incredible leader. But one thing I just noticed it in my third viewing. So what she kept doing is, like, she was still really, really short-tempered with people. And anytime that happened, Mantis was always there to, like, and she would still get annoyed with, like, Mantis was always there to kind of talk her down. And then, like, you could tell Nebula was still annoyed with her, but then, like, she listened, like, she knew Mantis was right, which is just, like, amazing. It's another example of amazing growth, because, like, early Nebula would have just, like, told her to shut up, or then tried to kill her, like, one. But now, like, even though she's gonna get annoyed by it and she may not necessarily personally agree with it, she's matured enough to see, like, she's absolutely right. Like, if I'm gonna be the leader that, like, I'm posing to be, I can't be screaming and, like, at everybody's face and calling them like an idiot. And then she, like, tones it down after that. Like, I thought the two of them playing off of each other in this movie was just, like, it was all time
phenomenal. Yeah.
The other thing with Nebula specifically that you look at it from a psychological perspective, and anyone with childhood trauma, I was going to say knows this, but if you haven't gone to therapy, go to therapy, and then you'll learn things like this. But when you have trauma from the past, from your childhood, your brain gets stuck as your brain hardens, and like your brain is basically like putty when you're a child. When you're a child, you can mold it just like Play-Doh, and you get skills so much easier because you can just constantly change the literal shape of your brain as you learn new skills. As you become an adult, your brain is essentially Play-Doh that's been left out for a while. Yeah, if you work really hard and press down really hard, you can mold it differently, but it's a lot firmer and more difficult. When you have trauma, your brain hardens in that childhood like state. So when you go through those triggering moments that trigger that trauma, your brain is essentially running at the same capacity of when you're a kid. And you see that with Nebula early on when people are yelling at her, and she's obviously had human trauma times a billion. She throws a temper tantrum like she's a little child. You can even see it when she's playing that game on the ship with Tony Stark, and she loses, and then she starts winning, and it's why I would like to play again, because it's like she's a little kid in those moments. And it's so interesting to see her just essentially grow through that, see her put in that work to somebody who's been changed so much physically on the outside to make her the perfect specimen to fight and to kill, to put that work to change on the inside, to be able to have that growth.
To willingly
Are
change.
there any
to not be put through that metamorphosis, without on your own terms. You're saying, and it's easy, we all as humans put walls up. We all get hurt and put walls up in some way, shape, or form, and being constantly changed your entire life physically, you would imagine that someone would want to really hold on to who they are mentally. And she, like you said, TJ, she works through that and doesn't hold on to that, doesn't put up walls, allows herself to change mentally like she did physically, but on her own terms, and uses it to become more powerful. And that's such a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah, like one of her lines that hit the hardest to me is when they're watching, because like Nebula does not speak lightly about the stuff that Thanos did to her. Like, and nor should she. He tortured her for the entirety of her life until she was able to get away from him. And then they're standing there watching the stuff happen to Rocket, and she just immediately says, like, this is worse than what Thanos did to me. And even in this movie, she brings up what Thanos did to her like 4 to 5 times and gets like upset and angry about it, like, and like rightfully so. But she was just immediately able to identify, like, this is worse, because it, like, I think in her head, like, obviously as sick and tormented as everything Thanos did, like, she's probably thinking, like, now I'm stronger because of it. Like, and he was, even though it's his own sick, fucked up way, like, he was trying to help me. Like, he was trying to build me into this, like, killing machine. All they were doing on Rocket was just experimenting and doing all this shit for the sake of just being a sick fuck, like, to help these other, like, creatures. It was nothing.
So they could throw him away and learn something.
Exactly. Nothing was to Rocket's benefit. Like, Nebula literally gets her neck snapped in this movie, and she's able to snap it right back because of the stuff that, like, Thanos did, like, as disgusting as it was. So, like, and I think when she sees that and immediately just says, like, this is worse than what Thanos did, that really hits me, given, everything that she's been through.
Yeah, same.
This movie really provided the action throughout was incredible, but 3 specific scenes stood out to me of just like, wow, this is some of the best stuff we've gotten in the MCU. One, when Adam Warlock arrives to nowhere. Now, this is a pretty third on the list by a pretty far margin, but it was still really cool, so I want to shout him out, because Drax gives him a couple good shots. He snaps Nebula so many different ways. We accurately and immediately get to understand Adam Warlock's power. And so I thought it was such a useful action sequence. It was cool, but it was also narratively so important. Number 2 on the list, and for me, I think this one's closer to number 1 than it is for most people, but number 1 is what it is, because it was such an amazing scene. But Groot, kill 'em all. With Star-Lord and Groot together, and Groot pulling out all of his guns, tossing Peter his elemental guns, and just going Groot mode. We get to see Groot go Groot mode once a movie where he just fucks shit up, and that was this scene, and wow, did I love it.
I feel like Groot had more I mean, not obviously as fuck him up as that, but he had a couple really, like, he stood out way more in this movie than he did in any of the other movies, I think. And Adam, I'm curious to hear all of you guys, actually you as well, TJ, but I talked to Adam specifically about this after my first viewing, is that I could tell more than any other time I've ever seen Groot by a far margin, and not just in the last "I love you guys" line, but I can tell every time he says "I am Groot" in this movie that it is Vin Diesel saying "I am Groot" in this movie. Do you guys notice that?
You've kind of ruined it for me because, like, the first time, like I told you, I didn't see it or I didn't hear it until the last one. Like in the last one, I don't know if they were just ready to get out of there for the day and they didn't have time to record another one or what was going. But that is so clearly Vin Diesel, like, and not Groot.
He's just like, "I am Groot."
Right? Or then my first one, in my first viewing, the last one was the only one that I really noticed. Like, it stands out instantly. And then you told me that, like, that's like later that night, you were like, or you said it in the group chat, you're like, am I the only one that could not just hear Vin Diesel coming through every? And as soon as you said that, now every time he speaks, like even from the very first couple of times, I'm just like, all I hear is Vin Diesel. So you've ruined Groot. You've ruined Groot in this movie for me.
I'm so sorry. But it's true. He's just Vin Groot now, or Groot Diesel. I don't know, but but I think that being said, I do think he has a lot of times to shine. That in the initial fight with Adam Warlock, when he goes Kaiju Groot, I think that's pretty damn cool. He obviously went in the scene where he has the guns, but then I also think it's cool that he's one of the people that tries to save Quill in the scene where he's out in space. I just felt like he was very, very utilized in this movie. Whereas now looking back, it's almost like he's vastly underutilized in the first movie. Obviously, he's a baby in the second one, so I'm not going to say much about that. But it's just cool seeing him being a kaiju, being able to fly. Like he's fucking useful as shit.
I love in the first movie when we don't really know the extent of Groot's power yet, and then he just sticks his branches through those people and flips them around everywhere, and you're like, oh god, this guy can do what?
He's very strong. Where has this been?
Yeah, you just understand Groot's abilities at a absolute different level. But of course, the coolest action scene of the movie was that one shot where they're in the hallway, no sleep till Brooklyn's playing. We get a pinch of each of their individual skill sets, and it's just such an incredible hallway fight, entire action scene.
Yes, I completely agree. Adam, I want you to go first because I'm going to say something controversial. So I want you to get your thoughts out first.
Oh boy, well now I'm scared and I'm just like, well, why should I even speak if you're just going to tell me, at the end? But no, I loved it. I've loved it all 3 times. It's one of the that's one of the scenes that I can't wait to dissect, like on Disney Plus or on YouTube, or probably YouTube first, whenever because it'll arrive on digital probably like a month and a half before it comes to Disney Plus. But I'm so ready because each time that I watch that scene, the 3 times that I've seen it, I like try to focus on somebody different. Like I go into it and the first time, obviously I don't know what's coming. So like I was just enjoying it for what it is. But then my second, my third viewing, I tried to focus on different people. And then I get like 10 seconds in and I'm just mesmerized and I'm like enjoying it. And then it's over. So like I'm so excited to get to watch it on YouTube and be able to like stop and rewind and pause and like see what's going, like when I'm noticing like when rockets like flying through the air shooting, be like there may have been something going on like in the background like behind him that I'm just like something really cool that I just completely missed because I'm so focused on all the stuff happening at the very front. I mean, there's so much going on in that whole scene, but like it's immediately like a great great fight scene. I love it.
I think it is great, and I think playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game really showed me how cool it should be to watch them fight together and like be synergistic and like fight off of each other, and that is what this hallway fight does really well. And also when they mop up the High Evolution at the very end, it's a similar kind of synergy, but it's shown really awesomely in this hallway scene. But I think we need to retire the hallway scene. Like, I think we've done enough with it. after this, you know, with the Guardians, you're not going to do it better than this, right? So like, let's find a new shtick essentially, and let's like, we don't need to do this anymore. This is the best that it gets, and I don't want to see it anymore. Like, let's. I could have had, and I'm going to be honest, even this hallway fight, like I could have had the hallway fight in the pre-chamber that they were in before they went in the hallway. I want to see like chaos. Like I feel like it was so contained in a hallway, and it could have been really cool. Like in the game, if you played the game, you know, there's these really cool fights that happen in these open rooms sometimes. And I feel like that maybe would allow for more. And when I'm watching the hallway fight,
you want the Civil War airport fight.
I mean, I think with the Guardians, that's the perfect team to do it with. But I loved the hallway fight. That being said, I don't want to complain because I did love it. I think it was fantastic. I think it showcased some really awesome things. But after this, let's just put it to rest because you're not beating this. Let's find something else that's cool like this.
Well, we're not getting any more fight scenes like that. Because if they can't film it in the volume, we're not going to get it anymore. And like that's what the volume does so well. Like in those little scenes, you can get like a really, really good. Like I'm a known volume hater. I know the people that enjoy it are listening right now and rolling their eyes at me. I'm never going to miss or like not take a chance to throw shots at the volume because I can't stand it. Unless there are times when it's done well, but we're not going to get another scene like that Captain America Civil War airport scene where they're fighting like all over the place. It's just going to be these, unfortunately, I hate to say this, it's just going to be these really, really small little contained areas like that because that's what you can shoot in the volume.
But let's just keep making the hallways smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and just see how the different fights adapt throughout the years. But we're definitely getting some more hallway fights in Daredevil Born Again. They're going to be coming in that one for sure.
Find something else. What did we do before hallway fights? What's the next hallway fight? Let's figure that out, and we did
nothing because there's always been a vast amount of hallways in buildings. Hallways have always exist because we need some way to get us from one room to another room.
Okay, this isn't a dig on hallways themselves, buddy. All right.
Garrett hates hallways, and he wants
I'm a
hallways.
Door and window enthusiast. Okay, doors only. Open plan, no hallways.
If there are any Easter eggs that we've kind of forgot to cover that stuck out to you guys, I've only had the one watch, so I'm sure there's a plethora that I have forgotten, so feel free to bring them up. But the one I want to take us to is the first post-credit scene where we see this new Guardians together, and obviously Adam Warlock is there, big new badass Groot, Rocket's leading the team. But one of the most interesting ones was Phyla-Vell, who is a character from comics that is a very powerful warrior. She is the child of Mar-Vell in comics. And of course, Mar-Vell in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Dr. Wendy Lawson. She was kind of Carol Danvers' mentor. Now, we don't really know of any extra special powers that Mar-Vell had in the MCU outside of her basically just being Kree. And we did see specifically Phyla-Vell with some photon beam looking glowy hands that look very similar to Carol's. We're expecting to see various there's reports and rumors that Carol Danvers may be married already, and we're going to see a husband somewhere in the Marvels.
I have not heard that.
I have literally no idea if that's true or a real thing. That was one of the things that they were talking about when it's like they're going to go to a singing planet. They're going to go to a planet that Carol has a certain past with someone, and that it made it sound like it was maybe a romantic past. It was in one of the I think teases for the Marvels or something like that. But the other kind of opportunity is, or not opportunity, the other, and I think more likely potential thing is if this character does have a comic retcon and is tied to Carol Danvers with those powers as opposed to Mar-Vell, is Carol's been all over the universe. The High Evolutionary is experimenting on people and stuff like that. It'd be interesting to see if it was like a X-23 and Wolverine type situation where it's a daughter by cloning, and she happens to be some relation to Captain Marvel in the future. I think that'd be very interesting.
I honestly don't even think we need to go that far. I think we've seen it's all explained for us in the movie. The High Evolutionary has created the Sovereign. The Sovereign created Adam. Adam is strong enough to survive in space, to fight in the entirety of the Guardians. Yeah, and I'm talking, of course, about our own Adam Blevins, not Adam Warlock. And then, of course, there's Adam Warlock, who makes our own Adam look weak. So you know that is just crazy strong. But no, that goes to say that the High Evolutionary has created these ultra strong beings before. So she could be ultra strong, and as a creation of the High Evolutionary, we wouldn't need to question it because he's already created these such strong beings. So I honestly don't think we need to bend over backwards and try to like retcon into a Kree, Marvel, Captain Marvel, anything. Like if we can just say she's of a strong race created by the High Evolutionary that, you know, can run for X amount of time, has a really high metabolism, can put together these batteries, is happy all the time, and then has photon beams. I think it's explained enough in this movie to where we don't have to question it going forward.
I would agree with that completely if her name wasn't Philavel. Like, if she was not the character Philavel, then I wouldn't be looking for these ties. If it was just the High Evolutionary created another really strong being, and her name was something else, then I wouldn't like have even looked into the glowing hands. But it's just the fact that her comics character is the child of Marvel.
I'm just saying I don't think they need to for us to accept it, but if they do, obviously, you know, they chose to name her that for a reason. But I think given the backstory of this character of the High Evolutionary, if they choose to not, I don't think any of us need to question it further.
Yeah, I don't think she needs it by any means. The backstory was enough for how this character has come to be. I just think it's very interesting with her name being Philavel that there's got to be some tie into Captain Marvel. If they're going to be space people, this Guardians team is going to meet up with Captain Marvel at some point, especially because, like, think of how great of a story that lines up to be already. We get a little bit of Adam Warlock versus Captain Marvel action. She finds out along the way that this may be her kid, similar to the Guardians of the Galaxy story in the video game. Just sort of give us that, but with Captain Marvel coming in here and Rocket leading that team, I think that would be super. You could literally do Adam Warlock's church in that setting as well. Have Adam Warlock starting to be pulled away to the dark side, and so they bring in Captain Marvel as a heavy hitter to be able to go toe to toe with him. She finds out that Philavel is her biological child because the High Evolutionary had her DNA, and so he created her. Oh my gosh, that's an amazing movie.
I think it's great. I think your mind works in funny ways, my friend. It always does. Of course, this is coming from the same guy who got out of Eternals and said Icarus is coming back as Sentry. So, I mean, I got to respect the way your mind works.
Yeah, that one was a big ol' L, but we've had some that have happened to tie up pretty well. Adam, I want to throw it to you first for the second post-credit scene where we get to see Peter back on Earth meeting his grandpa. It made me tear up, made us all tear up. His grandpa's reading the paper at the end that talks about Kevin Bacon's alien abduction. That was a fun little Easter egg as well. What did you think of ending it with this scene and leaving us with Star-Lord will return?
I was absolutely stunned when that rolled out. Like, I was thinking this is like the second post-credit scene is going to be just like a really, really sweet little thing. And then we see him sitting there with his grandpa. It's funny. I'm bad at catching this kind of stuff, especially my first watch. Like, I didn't even notice the newspaper. I remember I got out of the movie and everybody was like, "Oh my God, did y'all see the newspaper? Did you see the newspaper?" And I was like, "No, no idea. Wasn't paying attention at all." But then I was like, "Oh, that's really, really, like, as somebody that's seen the special, that's really cool." Cause, you know, like I enjoy when they actually acknowledge things that happen on Disney Plus instead of just like explain them away in like 5 seconds. That's like that's a big pet peeve that I have. I'm not gonna get into that. Like,
Yeah, you would not have survived as an Agents of Shield fan, my friend. Back in the day, back in the wartime.
I'm a known Agents of Shield lover. TJ, you're on mute. I see you trying to talk, but you're on full mute.
Thank you. When they're setting up a big storyline, and then Marvel Studios is like, actually, you can't use that anymore. We have this plan for a movie, and then they just got to pivot on the dime. Oh, love it so much. But that actually reminded me of the end of this movie too, where all the Guardians are going their separate ways. Big Agents of Shield vibes with the season finale where they all kind of meet up virtually that time again. That's exactly what that reminded me of. But sorry, go back, Adam.
No, you're fine. I'll never interrupt or take a chance from you guys to talk about Agents of Shield. I know that's y'all's.
Never again.
No,
he learned his lesson the first time, folks.
Well, okay, to go back to the Star-Lord will return thing. You know, we talked about this on Listen 3000, and I'm like super pessimistic about this stuff, especially because I've been listening to interviews and, you know, like Chris Pratt's talking about like how hesitant he is to come back. And obviously that very well could just be misdirection. He could already be inked for another like movie or another Disney Plus series or something. And he already knows where he's going to come back, but it's so hard for me to imagine any of these characters under somebody else's direction, like even just by themselves, like even if it's just like I know people have been talking about. I think it was Carlos, or it was either Carlos or AF that, you know, our very own, that said they can see Star-Lord popping up in Spider-Man, like doing some street level stuff with like Spider-Man, and I'm just like, that sounds really, really cool. But like, if I start to think about that, then I'm like, I just feel like I'm setting my expectations up like for failure.
I don't want that. I'm going to go on record and say I don't want that.
I can't see that, and I don't think that would fit. But where I could see him landing is with the Avengers.
See, like, Listen 3000, those guys, Caesar and Zen, absolutely torched me for this, and maybe you guys will do the same. I'm interested to hear what you guys had to say about this. But in my opinion, the legendary, I'm going to get cooked again. I can already tell. The legendary Star-Lord will return means in season 2 of What If, and then we're never going to see him again. That's what I think it means.
Honestly, I think that could be possible. I think there's a chance we never see him again. I think it's definitely more than likely something's happening to Earth on Secret Wars or whatever, and then so Star-Lord's going to be like, hey, there's major shit going down. Does somebody need some help? But I also think it was more just about leaving the door open because we know Dave Bautista is done. He is not coming back. Bradley Cooper, he's done. Now, maybe they can convince him to voice something again, but Sean Gunn even said he's not going to be doing any more mocap as Rocket. Gamora, Zoe Saldana, she said right off the get-go, like, I don't even want to be in it this much. I am definitely done. James Gunn talked about that in the press conference about like how he was considering killing off Gamora in Guardians 2, which is why he's so happy they did it in Infinity War, because Zoe Saldana didn't want to be there that much. And she said that from before the first movie. She was very open about it. Whereas Chris Pratt's the one guy that was like, even if I die in this movie, I'd be down to come back if they want to bring me back in some way. And so I think that's just kind of leaving it open of like, this dude's in the middle of his getting his bag season. He's got Guardians, he's got Mario, he's got Garfield and more. And so I think he's kind of in the life stage where it's like, yeah, if they ask me to come back for millions of dollars, I'm down. But they don't really have anything planned for him right now, if I would assume.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that level too. I don't think it's out of the question at all that could come back in a season of What If. I don't know if it would be Chris Pratt, but Star-Lord certainly. I think maybe I heard this on New Rockstars. Eric Voss said something about maybe Mantis is out exploring the stars now. She might like be the Star-Lord continuing on, and like it's a mantle, not necessarily like his superhero name, but it's a mantle going forward. And so someone like his sister, who is currently exploring the stars, could be considered the Star-Lord.
Here's my hot take, is that one day, and it might only be for like a movie, but Star-Lord and Mantis will be reuniting together on the Avengers.
Yeah, I think it's likely that we see Chris Pratt again down the line. If I'm going to be 1,000% honest with you, like I think here's the thing. I don't think they put that at the end without having some kind of like something in place to where we've talked to Chris Pratt. We said this is our eventual plan down the line. If you're down, we're down, kind of thing. And he was like, all right, let's do it. Like, I don't think we put that without certainty of some kind or a plan of some kind, because otherwise we can just say like Adam Warlock will return or something, like we don't need that post-credit scene. There's other characters that we will be seeing again that could have, if we want to continue to do the blank will return, card. So I have to imagine that there is some sort of plan, and whether it be another person being Star-Lord or bringing back Chris Pratt, I have to imagine that them putting that there has locked something into place.
Galaxy Brain for multiple years down the road. Mantis will come to Earth leveled up in a major way, way more powerful than she has been in the MCU, similar to what we've seen in the comics, with Mantis being kind of eternal level power, celestial level power. Which makes sense because all the celestial power from Peter was pulled out of him, but we don't necessarily know that happened with Mantis. We don't know it works the same way with her. But in addition to that, I think Peter will be joining up with the Avengers way down the line, and he will, after the tragic death of Richard Rider in some way, shape, or form, after we meet him in the MCU, Chris Pratt will be coming back as Star-Lord as a mentor to a young Sam Alexander, who will be the next Nova. So that is going to be how he is coming back. I clicked the little mark clip button so that 7 years down the road, when Agents of Fandom is a multi-million-dollar media corporation and we're all rich and famous, we'll be able to come back to this one and I'll say, I told you so. But we've been already on here for an hour and a half, so I'm going to throw it to each of you one more time to get through anything you want to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy or anything else. And in the meantime, I'll cover the housekeeping things. Make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, you hit that like button, you subscribe, hit that notification bell. Check out our Guardians of the Galaxy's interviews while you're there with Chikuti Iwuji and Sean Gunn. Make sure you check out the Agents of Fandom store, where you can get wonderful clothing like the hoodie that I have on right here, designed by our own amazing producer, Ruben Rapalda, in the background. And also make sure you're following the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcasts and all the other pods on our network, including Ticket to Reality, Fandom Academy, Listen 3000, as well as our YouTube shows, The Critics and Comic Corner. We have some big, exciting things coming to the Comic Corner here soon. I know Emma, AF, and Damon recently just had an interview that's going to be dropping over there. And then I also have an interview dropping soon with Jed McKay, he's a legendary Marvel comic writer, and he's writing the new Avengers book that's dropping next week. And I've already talked to him about joining up Comic Corner with Damon as well. So we got some big things cooking over there. And next week, we got an amazing show. We're going to be having a drafting our favorite third movies. This can be a third movie in a trilogy. It can be a third movie in a saga that goes past 3. As long as it's a third installment, we can pick it. We'll give you more details later, but that's going to be a lot of fun as well. And the content isn't going to stop coming. The week after that, it's our Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse primer. The week after that, we're going to be watching the movie and reviewing it. What comes after Spider-Verse 2 weeks later? It's Secret Invasion, which we're all incredibly excited for. After Secret Invasion, we have Ahsoka. The Marvels is going to be coming up. It just doesn't end. And we have you covered here with the Agents of Fandom. Adam, any other final thoughts from the movie, or just anything in general before we get out of here?
Well, final thoughts on the movie. I will just say one thing that we didn't hit on that I wanted to just to talk about briefly was just I really enjoyed James Gunn getting some of his regulars back in this movie. He had his wife Jennifer Holland playing the administrator.
Oh my God, he puts everyone in his movie. Blah, blah, blah. We had to talk about it, right?
I know. I personally really, really enjoy it. We had his wife as Jennifer Holland as administrator,
And her leg got
we had-
obliterated. I thought that was hilarious.
That was
It
hilarious.
was, and her screaming during that scene, I was like laughing my ass off at her screaming.
She looked like she bit the ground pretty hard. Like she ate it.
I can't be mad that he keeps putting his friends and his wife and his brother in these movies because
They're
they're
all
all
good.
fucking awesome. Like they're phenomenal actors.
Yeah,
Like,
they're all really, really good. So like, why are we complaining?
Right, and then we had Nathan Fillion as well. And the humor that I really thought all that stuff, like talking about I got one of those too.
That cracked me
stuff
up.
that was good.
Yes, that absolutely worked for me.
Yeah.
And then regarding the rest,
TJ,
of
we got one of those too, huh?
That's how I feel about Damon.
Oh yeah, that's
Okay,
yeah.
No,
Right.
I'm not gonna. We already gave Adam enough slack today. Damon's always my guy that I kick in the ass. So I'm gonna say the guy that I got like that. That's Damon. It's not Adam. Adam's great.
Well, you survive another one, buddy.
Yeah, I made that one through just with the fucking skin on my teeth. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it. If you want to read about the rest of the cameos, I'll say head over to the agentsofandom.com. Our very own Martha Wright wrote a great article detailing all the cameos, and then also we've got so many Guardians articles out on the website. We got cameos, we got an ending explained coming, we got post-credit scene, box office, full review, everything you guys want in regards to Guardians coverage you can find on agentsofandom.com. So go check that out. I had an absolute blast talking about this movie that I absolutely love. I just said absolutely twice right there. That sounded kind of bad, but I had a blast talking about this with you guys. This was so much fun, and this has been great.
Question for you guys before we get out of here. Something we didn't talk about, but I'm curious. I know I said I'm not a rankings guy, but I'm gonna drop it on you guys here at the end. Rank the movie soundtracks for me, both of you.
1, 3, 2.
Oh man, that's.
I think
I'll say 3, 1, 2. I think for me.
That's such a tough question because they are all phenomenal, but I think it's so hard to top the first one. I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie immortalized every song on that soundtrack. At least for anyone in our generation. And I don't know that the second can say the same, though all the songs are bangers. I think it's too early to tell. The
third did with a few.
Well, I mean,
the third I don't think we'll do with all
I
of
don't
them.
think I don't think we can say that a week after the movie is released, but time will tell. But the third is still fantastic. So I think for now I have to put one at the top based on how amazingly it's done, but I think 3 will come close.
Similar to all of us understanding Groot at the end of the movie. I love you guys, and it's been an honor getting to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy with you, and I can't wait to continue all the amazing content we have coming, so make sure you stay tuned to all the Agents of Fandom socials, at Agents Fandom on Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. We got more great interviews coming. It's not just the Guardian stuff from this past week, but we're going to be dropping all my stuff from the Calgary Expo. I talked with George Newbern and Susan Eisenberg, the voice actors for Superman and Wonder Woman, about what they've brought to the characters, as well as what they hope to see from the characters in the DCU, as well as Jed MacKay, a legendary Marvel writer, writing the new Avengers book, as well as many other things like Moon Knight and Doctor Strange. And also we got Sarah Nanachetti, who is the voice actor for Ash Ketchum. And we talked about what it was like finally wrapping Ash's Pokemon journey up and winning a championship after all the years, who her favorite partners were along the years, stuff like that. As well as an article with the voice actor for upcoming Spider-Man 2 game on PlayStation, Miles Morales, Najee Jeter, and we talked about Across the Spider-Verse, the upcoming game, and so much great stuff. So make sure you tune into that. On behalf of myself, TJ Zwarich, my co-host Garrett, our wonderful producer and co-host Adam, and of course Ruben behind the scenes, thank you so much to everyone who joined us, and we will see you next week.
Peace.